Hello, good afternoon. We're part of the Cloud SME project also, and we do another very different type of simulation. Cloud SME's got quite a number of different types of simulation involved in it. And what we're actually trying to do is bring the large business benefits of business simulation or discrete event simulation to small and medium enterprises. I'll explain a bit later on as to why that's actually difficult. But essentially what I'm going to do is run through what business simulation actually is. I'm then going to take you through our first use case. We've got two live at the moment. I'll just take you through one of them, and that's the simulation I'm going to run. We'll talk through what the business benefits are and why that's actually a little bit more difficult to achieve for an SME than it is for a large organisation, and I'll tell you about what the current status of our project is. But first of all, what actually is business simulation? Essentially what it's doing is it's modelling step by step everything that's actually happening in the real business process flow. So whether it's products through a manufacturing process, or it can be things like patients through hospitals or calls through call centres. It's the flow of work through a business process. And what it's doing is it's showing you an animation of that. So you can visually see what's going to happen if you make a change to that process. So you can just make a change and then visually see how it will perform, and you'll see that in a moment. But it's also numerically measuring how it's going to perform. So you can predict in advance and know whether there's some unexpected consequence that's going to occur if you actually change the real process. But let's take you through our first use case. And listening to some of the talks this morning, I'm actually a little bit concerned for this organisation. The organisation is called Cutting Tools, and they use a very traditional process for cutting things out. They make the tools that cut out pieces of leather, to make handbags, for example, or pieces of cardboard or whatever. Sounds to me from this morning as if they could be doing that job with a laser beam, but that's up to them. They use a traditional method to do it, and we are there to help them improve their process. So essentially they are making tools which are metal knives embedded in a board, which are then used to cut cardboard or leather for handbags or whatever. So that's an example of some of their tools. So that, for example, is a lot of very intricate pieces of metal fastened to a board, and it'll cut out a shape for a greetings card that when you open it, it pops up. That's the type of thing that they manufacture. So let's actually have a look at this simulation we've got here. If I just set that running, that's a simulation of what will happen in their factory if they've got a certain number of machines, a certain number of employees, and a certain set of orders going through that factory. And the decisions that they need to take are shown on here. They've got a number of different things that they can modify. They're predicting they're going to get more orders in the future. It looks like they're going to have 6,000 over the space of a year. They've got 5 staff, and they've got 1 CAD station and 1 bending machine which bends the knives into shape. So, and that's the nature of the order book. Different customers order different things that are going to take different amounts of time to produce. And if we just speed that up and run it through to the end of the year, and have a look at the kind of results that come out, let's only focus on one thing, if we can, that number there, which is the number of late orders. So out of 6,000 orders, over 5,500 of them were late. So obviously I'm trying to do this very quickly and it's not very fair on you, but is anybody willing to try coming up with an idea as to how to improve this? How many bending machines, how many employees do you want? I'm not being fair on you, so I'll have a go myself. Let's just put in 8 staff and we'll have a couple of bending machines. And it'll then take the same order book and run the whole thing through again for another year. But visually watching that, you can already see that the queue at the bending machine is much shorter than it was. Let's zoom it through to the end of the year and look at the results, and you'll see that we've magically got that down to 0 late orders. I've probably put too much staff in. Clearly you can optimize this and reduce the number of staff. You can see the principle of what it's doing. Now, cutting tools at the company are now starting to use this. If we can just, we'll switch back to the slides now, so that can go back to a slide so everyone can see that. In a large organisation, large organisations have really been doing this sort of thing for many years. In organisations like General Motors, for example, they've had an average improvement of throughput of 21% after they introduced a main board directive that nothing would change in any of their plants unless it was simulated with this type of simulation first. And that happens because you get ideas right first time. You come up with ideas, but how are you going to know whether they're right or not? You have better communication about the implementation of the idea. By using animation, you can show the shop floor workers the way they should now be working. You can involve all stakeholders from the start, because you're not trying to do some complex hidden calculations. You're showing something that's visual. You can make change feel safe. So everybody wants to try out ideas rather than standing back and saying, I daren't suggest something because it might go wrong. And the more ideas that you come up with, the better you'll find something to improve your process. Now, this is really difficult in SMEs because they don't want to put the time in to, they don't want to invest the time to create the simulations. They don't have the skill level required to do all the analysis. And because of the software cost. And what the project's doing is changing that by creating templates that are running on the cloud that work for organizations of which there are a lot. So apparently there are 10,000 companies like Cutting Tools across Europe, which is why we've chosen that. The other one we've also chosen are microbreweries, which is a more interesting product, but they can also benefit in the same sort of way of having standard templates. We're using the cloud, high-performance computing, so that we can automatically do the data analysis for them, so they don't have to have the skill level for that. And we're experimenting with using the cloud for new licensing models, like pay per run, pay per month, and things like that. So what's the current status? The current status is that we've got the simulation software running on a number of clouds. We've got 2 markets selected that I've mentioned, and we've got 2 templates ready for both of those classes of group to try, and we're just starting the experimentation process to see how well it works for them. So, thanks very much.